Acts chapter 14, verse 1. And it came about that in Iconium they entered the synagogue of the Jews together and spoke in such a manner that a great multitude believed, both of Jews and of Greeks. But the Jews who disbelieved stirred up the minds of the Gentiles and embittered them against the brethren. Therefore they spent a long time there, speaking boldly with reliance upon the Lord, who was bearing witness to the word of his grace, granting that signs and wonders be done by their hands. But the multitude of the city was divided, and some sided with the Jews and some with the apostles. And when an attempt was made by both the Gentiles and the Jews with their rulers to mistreat and to stone them, they became aware of it and fled to the cities of Lycaonia, Lystra, and Derbe, and the surrounding region. And they continued to preach the gospel. I'm going to stop there at that point. Okay? So just as a reminder, we just finished 2 sermons by Paul. And then they got, what would I call it? Kind of chased out a little bit.
Yeah.
In that in 51 of the previous chapter. But they shook off the dust of their feet in protest against them and went to Iconium. And the disciples were continually filled with joy and with the Holy Spirit. That's kind of where we left off last week there. And so we get into now this area of Iconium. So where is Iconium first, I guess?
It's about 90 miles southeast of the city in Antioch. So this is not the Antioch,
Of our Antioch right now.
but it's the other Antioch that's up north,
Right.
in Asia Minor.
This is in modern day Turkey.
Yeah.
Is where this is at. If you go to your Bible maps, every legitimate Bible has maps, right? It's scripture, right? The scriptural maps. Here you'll see that if you look at modern day, you'll see that is. I think the name of the city in Turkey is like Raynorth or some little short name. It's not Iconium. You won't see that name in today with it. And they entered the synagogue. So how many? This is not in Jewish land. Turkey is, this area here is not Jewish land. So how did they get a synagogue? What's it take to get a synagogue? I know the answer. I was just asking you guys.
Jews.
Yeah, it takes Jews first. Yeah.
But
How many Jews? Is there a number?
There was a formula. I forgot what it was.
It's 10.
10.
10 male Jews is the.
Of age.
I presume so. I presume so. But of age is like 13. So
Yeah.
the good old days. But it takes 10 to be able to create a synagogue. So it's possibly this is really small. I don't know. There's no count here, but
I remember they were all throughout history before this time they were taken off. So by Babylonians, by these people, those people are always punished. So that's basically not all of them returned back to Israel, which they know that's history.
Right.
So that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't long before this that the Greeks actually came in.
The what? The who?
The Greeks, Alexander the Great, everything actually had a dispersion of the,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I remember.
before the Romans.
Yeah, before the Romans. You had all that going on.
Entered the synagogue of the Jews together and spoke in such a manner that a great multitude believed, both of Jews and of Greeks. So,
You know what's funny? You say Greeks and everybody thinks, but with Gentile, I mean, this is Turkish, basically. I love it. So I wish, Gentile means, because Greek, I always go to Greeks, but no, it was Gentile.
Yeah.
Because these were Turkish or whatever you want to call the heritage back then.
yeah, and it's the Greek influence is huge in that area. I mean, a really wide, huge area there. We get a lot of our modern day stuff, medicines and stuff from the Greeks. Big, huge influence there. It says multitude, so What do you think we're talking about?
A lot of people.
That's right, that's what I would say.
I
That's what I
would
would
consider
say.
that as at least double digits,
Yeah.
possibly triple.
Yeah,
Whole bunch.
a whole bunch.
Yeah, much.
Yep, yeah.
The gaggle of them.
All right, so,
And it did strike me as interesting, you know, right above it said, in the synagogue, and then it turned around and talked about Jews and Greeks believe,
yeah,
but it, you know, I don't know if the Greeks were actually in the synagogue,
Yeah.
but maybe they were.
They were. Remember, I tell you, they found this in this region. They found the very first, one of the first, they think, synagogues. Just what you're talking about, and because of the inscription, you had Gentiles that were in there with them. It was pretty cool. I wish I could find that video again, but it's archaeology. Just what you said. They said, so you see, even at this time, you had the Jews were reaching out, I mean, in their way to the Gentiles, and they were going in to worship the one true God. It's pretty interesting. It really was. And it was in this region.
okay, so in verse 1, that's some good success. That's like a win, right?
So far, so good.
Yeah, and verse 2, the first word,
Your favorite word.
my favorite
Favorite
word,
word in the Bible.
but, and then this happened. Okay, so it's now transitioning. But the Jews who disbelieved stirred up the minds of the Gentiles. Does everyone have the word stirred up?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. It's kind of like a. I get this visual picture of like when you're mixing things, but it's in such a way that you can't unmix it.
Yeah.
Right? You've all seen when you've taken solutions and you blend them, you can't get the back separated away. And that's that kind of thing. This is such a stirring up that you can't reconcile back. You can't pull back from that. It's that kind of a stirring here.
Yeah, mine says poison. After that says poison in their mind.
And mine's got embittered.
Yeah, mine
Right.
says poison in their
Yeah.
mind.
Right. It's why do you think? I can kind of understand this if you go down to Jerusalem, down into the pure area here, the purest Jews. Why way up so far disconnected from Jerusalem would these people be doing that same thing, stirring it up? What's the motivation?
Well, they wanted to be true to their religion. I mean, they were grounded in Judaism.
Even that far away from home base, if you will?
I would think so. Maybe even worse, maybe even stronger, because they were isolated and dependent upon a small group and, so forth and so on.
They couldn't just adapt into the culture? Couldn't just,
My thought was, it's interesting that they stirred up the minds of the Gentiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not try to stir up the minds of the Jews?
Are the Gentiles and Greeks used interchangeably here?
Yeah, that's what the point that John was trying to make.
It sounds like a far-fetched story, but it ties. It reminds me very, very much of in China, we were there. Mao Zedong had his in the Red Army and all this. They called it the youth, which was teenagers basically. That was very similar to the Hitler and the Nazi youths, where they were kind of the enforcement arm for the government, for the communists. Oh, so-and-so didn't say, the quotes out of the Red Book, but they got fruit today, so they ought to be lashed or whatever it was. And the further you got away from Beijing, which is where Mao was, the worse they were. It was almost like, instead of just being in Beijing where, a little correction here and there, the further they got, they were just
Right,
brutal. They beat people to death over something really insignificant.
right,
And I see this possibly here, is that the further they get away from,
right.
I'll say home base, that whether it's to prove something, or the lack of oversight on their part, or their zeal, they're trying to prove something,
Yes,
that they're either wilder, if you use that phrase, than normal.
right.
And this could be the case here, where the further they get away, they have to be shown that they're good Jews. You know, we ousted this, and look what we did. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of reporting mechanism in some way, shape, or form back to home base. You know, through
The trades.
what do you call it? The Pharisees. You know, remember how they always say they went out to the Pharisees, and Paul used to contact the Pharisees first and go into the city.
Right.
You know, so there's some sort of chain of communication, maybe not command, and that may be their way of saying, "Look at us, we ousted another one."
I guess the puzzlement I have here is that when we look at the Christian faith, do we see that same kind of thing, that the further we get away, we get stronger from our core beliefs? I mean, do we stay as, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the word radicalized, but ethical in our faith. Do we, maybe I should ask the Catholics, the former Catholics among us.
Them?
Y'all. The further you get away from Rome,
Yeah.
Yeah.
does the Catholic get stronger or
No.
get weaker as it gets away from Rome?
Or different.
Or different? Does it?
We never even thought about it. It's all the same authority, same figurehead, same pope.
And same zeal?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying,
Well,
or even
Roman
stronger?
Catholic,
or-
going right. We never, as me, you know, you program as a young kid.
Yeah.
You never think anything different, quite frankly.
I do see something similar to that when it comes to small rural churches versus other types of churches. There's maybe an increased church culture, I guess, or what your
It's true.
churchness,
Yes.
holiness that's
Yeah.
not holy
Yeah.
based,
They stick more to the Bible.
or they create rules,
Yes.
derive rules from maybe some gray areas or not edicts from the Bible, and
More
they
yeah.
draw these lines, and they're very, very rigid on these in these smaller pockets.
Very law-based.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
You get
It's
law-based and it
it's-
becomes tradition.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, we've been
Good
watching, just coincidentally, a number of these cult things on TV, you know, the documentaries, or whatever you call them. You know, Jonestown comes to mind, the Branch Davidians is what we just happened to be watching not too long ago, in the Waco thing, because that was in theory, a religious group
Yeah.
that got out of control. But these different cult things, they kind of go off, and it's leadership. It comes back to the individuals and how much power that they particularly control. And I don't know if it's because they're physically far away that they don't have anybody keeping them in check. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. And I don't know if geography has a lot to do with it, but you would think that there'd be less, I use the word cults, underneath, let's say, the Vatican, from, you know, around there, than there would be over here. Just because of the proximity of that. I don't know.
Huh.
Interesting thought.
Well, Catholicism, there's just a hierarchy, all right? There's a well-structured, well-set-up hierarchy of who answers to who answers to who answers
Yeah.
to the Pope. So there is a, you know,
So wouldn't that be wise that Protestants would do the same thing then, in order to hold the thing? Don't go so dogmatic on me yet.
You know what? You know
My
what's
golly,
sad
no.
is what he said. The problem is, just what you said, is what he says, what goes on, is the people, I'll be frank with you, I think pastors, let's say, I'm one of those with larger congregations from our size on up, what they expect out of a pastor, I think, is almost like a priest. I want him on speed dial, 24 hours a day. I'm sorry, that's not what that pastor's supposed to me. He is being stretched too thin. We are supposed to have, we're the church, y'all. We are the church.
Right.
So we ought to have fellowship with each other. When I have a problem, I'm sorry. I have a network of friends who are Christians. I mean, we make fun of the Roman Catholics, but boy, some of the structural level, what they expect out this poor man is ridiculous. I'm sorry. And it's not fair to him. You know, and I really mean that sincere. I mean, we look at him as almost like a guy like Figure. I'm sorry. No, he's to do what he's supposed to do. I get it. But we ought to take care of ourselves, so to speak. You know, and I think that's where the church has kind of got off base a little bit.
Yeah, I see a lot of times we look at it as it's efficiency
Yes.
to have this organization. You know, let's get this organization. And there's some efficiency, and there's a lot of inefficiencies in the way that we operate. But we tolerate those inefficiencies.
Yeah, that's the right way to say it. That's the right way to say
Efficiency
it.
and consistency.
Yeah, yeah,
But it also, problem I have with the hierarchy is the whole thing about corruption. I mean, power.
It's authority.
yeah.
Authority and the
Yeah.
power, getting that power of corruption
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you just look at the world of politics now,
Yeah.
it's all about power.
And because look, sometimes it's well-meaning. Look, sometimes it's well-meaning, you don't realize it, but then
That
you
you're
gotta
doing it,
take
yeah.
a step back and say, wait, hold on. I'm doing it for the right reason, but when you step back and look at it, so no, it's a power grab, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I see what you're saying. I mean, like this congregation, I think, you know, we look at what's going on. I think, you know, like committees. Well, I think you could have one committee on, okay, open up for someone else. You only get one, not 6. Now, I get it, there's no one, but a lot of times there's other people who want to step up to the plate, but they've got their names in hat, but guess what? Everybody only knows certain people, so I think you gotta say, hey, listen, to spread it around, because we want people to help out. So I'm saying, you're right, and other people say, well, no, I want to be part of that one too. They're well-meaning, but you know what? No, we need to spread it around.
Right. Before I forget, I forgot to mention that in Iconium here, at this location, that's the area of Galatia. All the churches of Galatia are here.
Okay.
So if you start reading the book of Galatians, you'll see you'll start to see the stories if you go back and forth across the thing here. This is at the time of Galatia when he's out there, so it's kind of an interesting side thing here.
Interesting side. Okay.
Okay. So in verse 2, verse 1, great win, woohoo, we're doing great. Verse 2, oh my gosh, things are going bad. And therefore, Paul and Barnabas decided to leave because same thing in verse 51, they just left. Nope, that's not what happened. How was their response?
Spent a long time there.
Therefore, they spent a long time.
Speaking boldly, yep.
Now remember though, the last time they got run off, they wanted to kill him.
Yeah,
So this time it's early. They don't want to kill him yet.
Right.
Not
They
yet.
just stirred
Yeah,
things
stirred
up. So I get it. Paul says, okay, we're not going to give up yet because no bodily harm. We're okay.
Yeah.
You know, I love it because you know everybody says, well, I got to die for the gospel. I got to die for the gospel. I get it. Look at Paul. He says, they're trying to kill us. Let's go. Time to go. You know what I mean? Like, we got to kind of put things in perspective.
It's
Paul just wasn't a fool, except when he went back to Jerusalem.
it reminds me of General MacArthur's, General Patton. He would always say this to the troops, is that don't die for your country. Let the enemy die for their country.
Right.
Patton said that?
Yeah, Patton said that.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
He actually had a lot of cuss words in there.
I'm sure he did. That's a filtered version, huh?
Yeah, yes.
I know, I gotta remember that. That's
Yeah.
a good saying.
Yeah, it's great.
It is, and it makes sense.
So, anyways, so in 3 we get where he is just there and there a long time. I don't know what the time is, but a long time. Speaking boldly with reliance upon the Lord is what mine has. It has the word reliance on there. And it is the Lord who is bearing witness to the word of his grace, granting that signs and wonders be done by their hands. If you take out the parenthetical, the sentence fragment, and you read it, reliance upon the Lord, granting that signs and wonders be done by their hands, is how you read that. This is the Lord granting the signs and wonders to be done.
By their hand meaning,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's interesting, but a long time, yeah.
So what are these signs?
And why? Think about that, because you got to as you keep reading, you're going to find out where they're at, what the culture is. Look, people don't realize, we all look at these Gentiles. These Gentiles were very religious.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in the one true God. They believed in, like yours reading, we're reading.
Greeks.
They believed in a little God.
Greek-like.
They were very religious. They knew that only divine beings could do these signs and wonders.
Yeah.
And it's true. You gotta put things in perspective. When they saw that, went, whoa. And that's what Paul would say, hey, you see those little gods you serve? The one true God is doing these. He has power over them. He is the one true God. That's why they were so interested in their message. When you look up that culture, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Any of your translations say miracles instead of signs?
Signs and wonders.
So what's a sign?
Wonders.
Besides, a sign. Is a sign a miracle? What is a sign in this?
I think if you put everything else in context, I think signs and wonders is miracles.
Yeah.
I think it's what exactly I mean. I mean, it's like anything else. We talk in different, some words are not, but they all mean the same.
Well, I wonder what the definition of a miracle is. Getting a lame person to get up and walk. Okay, that's a miracle.
Well, you see that coming up too.
But I'm wondering if you've been awed by nature, put it that way. And to me, that's a sign, but it's not necessarily a miracle.
But it wasn't done at their hands. You gotta remember now, this is signs and wonders done at the apostles' hands.
By their hands.
So this is
yeah.
performing some type of, to me, what we would call, again, it would be in context of everything else. They say miracles sometimes, signs and wonders, but this is what they're doing. So it's gotta be something that astonishes them.
Well, like Moses, for instance,
That's right.
they showed, the plagues,
Right.
various plagues and the blood and all that sort of stuff was a sign. Now, whether you call that a miracle,
What,
I don't know what the definition
I don't know. You
is.
turned the Nile blood. I say it's a miracle.
But I
You
think
part the Red
miracles
Sea.
are more-
I think that's a miracle.
So let me try the question a different way.
Probably the Lord.
Instead of what is a sign, what is the purpose
Ah.
of a sign?
But the Bible, my Bible here, it just gives the words where it says signs and wonders, attesting miracles, right?
Attesting?
Attesting, right.
In other words, the purpose of the sign was to attest to what they were saying. It's the same thing that Jesus did,
Right.
right? Jesus performed miracles to attest to the fact that he was who he said he was,
Exactly.
right? So,
And that's what these signs are, is to attest what God is doing, not what Paul and Barnabas are
Right.
doing, and putting the reflection back on them, like some kind of mad guy, type of trickster, but rather to point to God. All of these are about pointing to God. And the result is a wonder of the people. Signs and wonders. That's how you get that phrasing.
But what's important is read before preceding that. This is what I love it. What about God? His grace.
right.
So Paul's message was his grace, telling all about how Christ was the Messiah, he saved mankind.
Yep.
All about his grace. And he says, to prove that he is who I say he is, we're going to perform these signs, wonders, /miracles.
Right.
It was all to, like you said, to show this is the one true God. I'm telling you, he's real. He is full of grace and mercy. He came to die for you. I think that's what we got to
It's
understand.
incredible. And I'll add on to that it's not just the grace, it's the word, to the word of his grace.
That's right. That's
Okay?
right.
That is the message, the good news
Yep.
that is there, that grace is available. Okay, and so in 4, we get a problem again. Because there's a but going on here. But the multitude of the city was divided. Is this the same nice way of saying we had riots in the streets and that kind of divisions? We had, what are they, marches,
Could be. Mostly peaceful, you mean?
yeah, mostly peaceful. Yeah, I know. All carrying flowers or something, with little rainbow things or something. So they were divided. So there was, it's more than just within the synagogue, right? This is now spreading out wider, is what is going on here. And some were siding with the Jews and some with the apostles. So he's kind of dividing the groups up, right?
And remember that this is after they had spent a long time
Yes.
boldly speaking, right? So, as time went on, as they boldly spoke and as these miracles, so their popularity, but
Notoriety.
their notoriety spreads,
It
right? So
started
now
spreading.
you start affecting not just the synagogue, you start affecting the whole city,
Right. Right.
right?
I
To
think
where
that they
people
were
can
aware
agree.
of it. They weren't like in their own bubble thinking that everything's fine. They knew there was this
Oh, sure.
undercurrent going on. in the
Oh,
background.
absolutely, yeah.
But then they continued to boldly speak, which made them even more mad or upset. So it just kind of did
It
this.
just kind of escalates, right?
Yeah, so
Some
I think-
people are gonna believe, some people aren't gonna believe.
Right.
Okay, so we've got a problem here. I thought Christians were supposed to, like love and peace and joy and bring harmony and unity to everybody. That the message of God is inclusive. It brings everybody together.
Like a Joel Osteen.
Kind of like. But that's not what is happening here. There is division being built up. And why did they stay so long?
Because there's more people to reach.
There's more people to reach. And also, I think, as a reminder, they weren't there to just get people saved, build up their numbers, but to disciple. That is what Matthew 28 is all about,
Good point.
is to go and make disciples. Disciples means time. You can become a Christian instantly, right? Instantly you can. But to be a disciple, you can't instantly be.
That's true.
Well, you know, that's a good point, because you gotta remember what Paul was preaching, it was totally new.
Yeah.
It was totally new. And, you know, you gotta remember why, and people say, well, how come the Jews were making the Gentiles get all the uproar? Well, there's two reasons. My enemy can be my friend as long as you're my enemy.
Yeah, the enemy of my enemy.
Well, that's what was, remember if you read later on in the book of Acts, with how they get them stirred up is, it's all about money, y'all. You gotta understand, in this culture, they had many gods. You had silversmiths, and they would make these little little gods to sell to people. Well, guess what Paul was saying? That's not real.
Right.
You don't need that anymore. So the Jews would go around saying, hey, they're taking your income away from you.
That's what they did with Jesus. They got the
Oh, sure.
Gentiles
Yeah.
to do the dirty work. The Jews didn't crucify Jesus.
Right.
The Romans did.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's the
Good
same
point.
type of thing,
Yeah.
because they have their rules. I can't do anything harm,
right.
but I can certainly
Yep.
feed the flame and let you hurt the guy.
That's right.
And continuing forward, and when an attempt was made by both the Gentiles and the Jews with their rulers, okay, to mistreat and to stone them. Has everyone had the word mistreat? That seems like an odd.
Abuse.
Odd.
Yeah, mine says abuse.
Abuse, right. It just seems odd that they would add that and to stone them. So I'm assuming it's more than just throwing stones at them, but verbal abuse, other
Making
kinds
life
of
miserable for them.
making life miserable
Yep.
for them, right? Well, I'm sorry, the water well isn't open today.
Right, probably progressed, right, from mistreatment to stoning,
Right,
right, into
right,
the,
exactly. Okay.
Or maybe people mistreat them
yep,
Yeah,
in the process to give them the punishment of a stoning.
right, right. So in 6, they continue this with they became aware of it. So who's the they, real quick? That would be
Paul and
Paul the
Paul and
apostle,
his
right?
group.
But Paul and Barnabas
And his
and his
people.
clan. Aware of it and fled to the cities of Lycaonia, Lystra, and Derbe. It's if you took Iconium and you went southwest a little bit, then southeast a little bit, they're zigzagging back down towards the waterway, but they're not quite there. And the surrounding region. So these are the Galatian churches that they're visiting there. And they gave up the preaching of the gospel and ran away. So the absolute opposite of that. They continued to preach the gospel with it. So the success evaluation was in their failure?
Success would have been if they had no persecution. Everything was accepted,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Isn't that?
Is that kind of the way it looks? I mean,
Well,
people try to make it
no,
look that way? Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm definitely being.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, you know what I think the problem is? We are taught in our culture, success. Actually, the way we are, we don't worry about it. We should.
We shouldn't.
Should not worry about
Right.
numbers and success. We just keep doing our thing
Keep doing.
and let the good Lord take care of the rest. I think that's what Paul's mindset, except when it came to the Jews, he had a heart for his people. He was kind of that way.
Yeah, but when you think of if they had very little to no impact, the Jews and the rulers wouldn't have cared.
sure,
Right.
You know, when you get a lot of flack, that means you're over the target. so to speak.
Right.
The same type of mentality.
But the only time that you really see Paul's, I think, frustration, if you read later on in, I think it was Galatians, I'm not sure, where right before he was going to be killed, he says everybody has left him, basically. They have less, and what he was talking about his churches, they were going back to the law, and he was very disappointed in them. Not that he wasn't successful, if you read it, it's just because his heart was y'all. You don't understand what the message I gave you.
Right.
That's the only time you can feel with Paul. It was, I don't think it was about success, it was about y'all. You're going back to this phony stuff.
Other gospel. You call it the other
The
gospel.
other gospel.
Yeah.
So it's very, taking it totalitarian. You can see his life, at the end of his life. Pretty interesting.
So our success should be measured by obedience?
Yes.
Just faithfully preaching and teaching, evangelizing,
Right.
worshiping.
Right. That's our success.
Keep on.
Yeah.
Keep on.
Our success is not measured by a Joel Osteen result.
Your success is living by faith, y'all.
Yes.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
It's nothing. Without faith, you can't please God. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
What that encompasses, living by faith. That's what it is. Living by faith. If you live by faith, you're gonna love people. You live by faith, you're not gonna worry about things. Sometimes your mind gets a stinking thought. Get rid of it. Go back by living by faith.
Our commission is not to win souls to Christ.
That's right.
That's
It's
right.
to spread the word
Yep.
Right. And to make disciples.
and to make disciples.
Make disciples. That's another thing. You're
Yeah.
right. We kind of make disciples, and then we don't make disciples because
Like, oh,
you got it.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, move on to the next guy.
Yeah. Our goal is to get them saved and get out. Right?
Yeah,
That kind of
yeah,
thing. That's
yeah.
not
No.
what it's about.
I mean, if you look every conversion, there's a personal cost to the person.
Yeah.
You give up turning husband against wife, and you leave the family, you leave the job, you leave your riches to follow Christ. There's a cost to it.
Yep.
So, if there wasn't a burning trail behind them, there really is no cost to the believers.
Right.
And there is a worldly cost for heavenly benefit, and
Yeah, I think particularly in this and currently in the Middle Eastern culture, we pay a cost here in that we may lose some friends or lose some relationships, but in this culture at this time, it costs them everything.
Yeah.
In the Middle Eastern culture now, it basically puts you're on a death list.
Right.
They have the right to, your family has the right to,
Yeah, our culture you get made fun of.
yes.
Right.
Or
But you're right. That culture
Yeah,
still to this
taken
day
away,
blows you away.
Benefits taken away.
I think-
Look, I got friends who are still Roman Catholic, and they know what my faith is. And listen, they look at me as a weirdo.
Right.
And they do. Look, I don't have a problem with it. I am weird, but I don't worry about it. But they have this own. I'm a weirdo, so and I'm okay with that. But that's right. Our culture is.
We love you, John.
Right. Well, I think that goes back to the whole thing that we talked about here about making, about mistreating, and that whole thing is that, their life was made very difficult
Yes.
because they, it's the whole thing with society now. You don't agree with me, I'm gonna make your life miserable.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Until you agree with me.
until you agree with me.
And that's what I say with Paul. They're gonna stone him just for, think about this, just because they preach a gospel. That God loves you, He saved you, no more works, don't worry about these other guys as far as you Jews. Hey, He was the Messiah. Think about that and look at what we got. Oh, LGBT, I get it, LGBT, I get it, I understand that. I'm not going, but look at what they went through just for saying, hey, Jesus is the Messiah. God loves you, and through Christ you're saved. Oh, we're gonna stone you.
Well, they consider it blasphemy because you're talking about our God. And
Yes.
There is no equal, but now you're saying there is. So that's what they were stoning me for,
Yeah.
Well,
supposedly.
here's,
Yeah.
the other weird thing is that the Jews didn't believe what the Gentiles were doing anyway.
That's right.
It was the Gentiles were completely against what the.
They had 7 or 8 gods, 10, 12 gods
Right.
instead of the one.
Yeah, it's not like they agreed with them. They just used them to,
That's
like I
right.
said, to do their dirty work, right?
And the thing is, look at the Jews in that culture, and it's kind of interesting. They were accepted because, again, in that culture, we got to understand they believed in gods. They said, "Oh, but Jews, you got that, that's fine, you go ahead and worship your God.
You got
Just
one.
leave us alone.
You got a guy.
Yeah, just leave us alone, just worship God. I mean, it's, do some history research, it's pretty cool when you think about it, what they believe.
All right, we need to stop here. What are you guys praying for?